Hello, Milwaukee Bucks fans. Welcome back to Bucks Latest, presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We're still on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so if you'd hit that button, I would really appreciate it. And also turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, so first segment we're going to get into today, it's somewhat of a given because we're going to be talking about Giannis's, the need for Giannis to stay healthy throughout the course of the 2025-26 season. And while that's again been a given for every year of since his prime began, for the Bucks to be successful, that we're going to need a healthy Giannis for the entirety of the season. This year specifically, it's going to be extremely imperative that Giannis plays in as many out of 82 games as possible because this team is going to desperately need him. With no Damian Lillard, Giannis is going to take on a lot more point guard responsibilities, though that's what he has been doing basically since the beginning of his prime. And it's not like Giannis has given us like an indication that like, oh, he's going to be out for a good chunk of time, or he's had a lingering injury history where there's a chance that he may miss 30 or 40 games in the season. That hasn't really been a thing with Giannis. He's been more or less consistent in terms of his health. But Fanside, it's John Spiza came out with an article basically, you know, talking about the necessity for Giannis to not just be at his best, but be as available as he possibly can, because this team and this team's construction is, of course, way different than in previous years. And he says himself, and I quote, "There's no way around it. Even more so than in prior seasons, a lengthy Giannis injury absence would be a nightmare scenario that would tank the season in a hurry. National media networks would salivate over that one." And isn't that true? There is room for optimism, however. Demonstrating a solid baseline of durability, Giannis still hasn't had a season of under 60 games. 2 seasons ago, he broke 70, a not so frequent feat in today's game. Earlier in his career, he reached 80 in 3 straight seasons and 72 plus in each of his first six. So again, it's not like Giannis Antetokounmpo has given anybody in Bucks fandom a reason to believe that he's going to miss a significant portion of this season, but it's still something to think about because no one really knows when injuries are going to strike, knock on wood, because we saw with Jason Tatum with the Achilles, even Damian Lillard with the the Achilles injury, that he's going to be out for the entirety of next season, and that's why the Bucks decided to waive and stretch his contract. With Tyrese Halliburton going to be out for probably all of next season for the Pacers, injuries can strike wherever and to whomever. So it's not really something you could predict, but load management is going to play a major role in the Bucks' potential success, or the Milwaukee Bucks having a potentially deep postseason run in the 2026 playoffs. So it's something to not look out for, but the Bucks are going to, and Doc Rivers specifically, they're going to be thinking, how can we concoct uh, certain lineup combinations that can benefit Giannis the most with regard to not just staying on the court and staying consistent on the court, but staying consistently healthy. So his, history or non-history, I guess you could say, of not having any long-term injury, you know, diagnoses or any kind of scares like that. That also is major for a guy like Giannis, who, of course, as tall as he is and as long as he is, he's never really had any super disastrous injuries. So hopefully that kind of trend continues in 25-26. But load management is going to be at the center of the Bucks' potential success in 25-26. And now after that, we will move on to a little bit of a trade proposal. And I don't necessarily love to get into so many like far-fetched trade ideas on this kind of show, but this one coming from Sporting News' John Conahan and also from Sports Illustrated's Jackson Caudell, uh, this one is basically the same package and the same kind of three-team trade package that we would have seen for a deal for De'Aaron Fox. We covered a De'Aaron Fox trade proposal from the same kind of source maybe a week ago, maybe a and a half ago. And of course, since then, De'Aaron Fox signed the 4-year max $229 million extension with the Spurs, so he's not going to be going anywhere, at least for the next 2-3 years. But in this package, this three-team trade package with the Bucks, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Atlanta Hawks, the Bucks obviously receive Michael Porter Jr. The Nets would then get Kyle Kuzma, Gary Harris, AJ Green. It would hurt to give up AJ Green in a deal like this, and Tyler Smith, and the unprotected 20 to 31 first round pick swap. That's all going to Brooklyn, and then the Hawks get Andre Jackson Jr. So Caudell wrote, Milwaukee should be thrilled with this trade. Porter Jr. is a huge upgrade over Kuzma and makes the Bucks better. He provides size and shooting to a team that needs both of those things, and this should help Milwaukee keep Giannis around. And while it could motivate Giannis to potentially stay around, this isn't necessarily the I don't know. It's definitely better. It's definitely, of course, like he says, an upgrade over Kuzma because they're going to need some other one-on-one shot creation other than Giannis and other than Bobby Portis, really, for this team to be successful. They're going to need a guy to fill up the Chris Middleton void that has been left since he was traded to the Washington Wizards. And Michael Porter Jr. certainly profiles to be that guy. Of course, taking a huge volume of threes and he's connecting on them at a very high rate, over 20 points a game score. He's been doing it again at an efficient rate for the past year or two now. He's pretty much a solidified like tertiary scoring option for a competitive championship contending team. And now, of course, he heads to Brooklyn in the Cam Johnson deal, but who knows? Maybe he won't stay around in Brooklyn too often, or for too long. And maybe the Nets are trying to concoct another trade to get MPJ out for more young players or more draft capital because he's definitely a player that you can still move on after acquiring him for, you can get him and then flip him for more future assets down the road. And Michael Porter Jr., you can't really deny his potential fit for the Milwaukee Bucks. While his defense has always been somewhat questionable, he's shown flashes of being a pretty solid and dependable defender, especially with his frame and his agility. He has all the tools to be a good defender, but with how much energy he expends on the offensive end, you would understand why he might lack a little bit on the defensive side. But Michael Porter Jr. would be a perfect option as a guy to stand in the corner and knock down catch and shoot 3-point looks, can obviously create for himself off the dribble, but he's more of a catch and shoot dependent player. And again, that's just the perfect archetype for a guy that's playing with Giannis, a guy that's playing now alongside Myles Turner, where you could add even more floor spacing to this kind of group. Giving up AJ Green in this trade is the big caveat for me. I really would not like to let him go because I feel as though if the Bucks were to get to a point where they're competing for a title in 2026, AJ Green, believe it or not, is going to be a huge piece of that. And he's going to play the same kind of role that Pat Connaughton played in the 2021 run if he can remain a great and unbelievably consistent 3-point shooter. He will fill into that same kind of role MPJ would fill into the Chris Middleton role if things were to go well, if this hypothetical were to go through. And that's just how it would go. Um, so I would not want to give up AJ Green. Of course, Andre Jackson Jr. I wouldn't be too happy about losing either. But if you were to choose between one or the other, while I am very high on Ajax, feel like I would rather keep AJ Green for this season specifically and for this potential deep postseason run specifically. Moving forward, we're going back to Giannis a little bit because he he has made it very apparent that he wants to stay in Milwaukee for the next little while, and that the trade rumor stuff, the reports coming out from Shams Charania while he's trying to, stir up offseason controversy, it's not really working necessarily. And Giannis himself, the Bucks front office, it seems as though they're on good terms, and it's kind of just it's not really a non-factor because of course Giannis can really request a trade at any point, and it could be super serious, and he really could be looking to explore his options and go to a competitive team. But for right now, Giannis is fairly satisfied staying in Milwaukee. And Fanside, it's Dalton Sell came out with an article basically going back at Charania's claims and reports that nothing is set in stone with Giannis, that he's still very much on the fence of whether he wants to request a trade or if he's, looking at his options and things like that. And Dalton Sell points out that Giannis was a big player in getting Myles Turner to Milwaukee. So he questions why would Giannis go through all that trouble of getting a guy like Myles Turner, who was playing for their rival Indiana Pacers, why he would go through that much, why he would put in that much effort to recruit a guy that he Myles Turner would not have been the easiest free agent get this offseason, mainly because of the team that he played for. And for him to put in that much effort to get Myles Turner to kind of come over to the dark side, that's that requires a lot of attention and focus, and he would have to be serious about his near future in Milwaukee if he wants to conduct a move like that and play such a big part in it. So Dalton Sell points out that why would Giannis get Myles Turner if he was just going to leave immediately? Um, and really, like, if he were to have left, he would have done it this summer. I've stated this in previous episodes, and this kind of just compounds onto that point that if Giannis were serious about leaving and really exploring his options to go elsewhere to compete for a title, a second title, he would have done it already this summer. So the Myles Turner point, and when you just factor all of these things in, and the Bucks front office and GM John Horst saying that, it seems as though he and the Bucks are good on all fronts right now, and there's not really any risk for him deciding to request a trade. Of course, it can still happen, but it doesn't look like it's going to in the next year, maybe even the next 2 years. I feel like we're kind of safe for the moment. But something that kind of has me a little bit fired up personally, going into 25, 26, and again with all this discourse surrounding Giannis and how he's going to have to backpack this team and what he's going to have to do to get this team to a place where they can make a deep postseason run, is that he's going to be suiting up for Greece and competing in Eurobasket again this summer. And what I think is going to be like, this might be the best thing for Giannis, because it seems as though he has a track record of when he has summer basketball to play, then that leads into the regular season of the NBA, and then he's all warmed up and he's already in a rhythm, and then he comes out and he has one of the best seasons of his career. So this is going to be the second consecutive summer that Giannis is playing competitive basketball. And of course, summer of 2024, he was playing for Greece in the Olympics. And then he comes out in 24, 25 and just dominates again. He's become a consensus MVP finalist year in and year out. But this past year was arguably his best. About over 30 points a game, 12 boards, 6 assists, shooting 60% from the field. No one has done that for a whole season since Shaq, I believe. um, it seems as though there could be, and what I'm hoping is a nice little trend where if Giannis is able to get into a rhythm in the summer and play competitive, meaningful basketball, then it's just going to keep him in a zone, and it's going to lead into the regular season where he's just going to continue to go off. And maybe this is wishful thinking, because it's really hard to ask a guy, again, after competing year round 2 years in a row, that he's just going to keep going and going and going. This is a huge ask. But when you think about who Giannis is and his fire and the type of competitor that he is, he's still going to be going a million miles an hour this season regardless. So I'm looking forward to another individually successful season for Giannis, but I'm hoping that it can lead to the Bucks maybe capturing a top 4 seed in the East if he's able to. And maybe again, this is wishful thinking, but it seems as though a guy like Giannis just doesn't get tired, and I feel like that excuse me, is going to continue in 25, 26. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much again for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Again, I've been Dean Simon. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. I will see you guys in the next one, and go Bucks.